Escape the room employees. What is the most bizarre thing you've seen? Not an escape room employee, but I tried one in Budapest. A specifically stated rule was that we wouldn't have to physically move anything to solve the various puzzles. Anyway, there was one sort of library room that upon entering, my pathetic party of Welsh boys and Irish girls immediately began ripping all of the books off the shelves in a mad, savage attempt to find some sort of code. About 15 seconds into absolutely violating this room, the middle-aged Hungarian dude working as a guide disappointingly reminded us over the intercom that our actions were ultimately unnecessary to solve the cursed room. Needless to say, we all felt a bit foolish. Story 2. Obligatory not an employee, but I'm sure my friend group looked pretty weird to them. We did the one where you get stuck in handcuffs and had to unlock them, but we couldn't get the key to work on one of my friends. We assumed there was another key to get the last person for some reason, and left her attached to the wall for like 20 minutes. Turns out her cuffs were broken, and we had to pause the game so the employees could come get her out with bolt cutters. They were shocked that we just left her there, but we thought it was part of it. Story 3. When I was in one, they literally told us not to kick any little people. There was an influx of little people at this escape room, and they were all hidden around the complex. I thought this was strange, until I walked past a place that resembled somebody's kitchen. This little Kiwi starts banging inside an oven while yelling at the top of his lungs. I open the door and there's this little person banging on the sides of the oven with a wooden spoon. We both put our hands up like, hello, and then proceeded to move on. I miss my little Kiwi moment. Story 4. I work at adventure rooms. People do weird stuff all the time, so often that it all kind of blends together. A lot of what people have already mentioned. Taking off / putting on clothes in the room, trying to eat things in the room, both things they brought and things they found, trying to punch holes in the walls and climb into the ceilings, cut up the carpet, convince themselves they're still in the room after they finished, looking for puzzles and stuff. But more often than not, the weird stuff is related to demographic / religious circumstances or issues. Stuff like the hyper-Catholic Hispanic family that took one step into the room with the Ouija board puzzle and then instantly sprinted out, demanding a refund. Really, it's a lot of religious stuff. When I started the job, my manager was like, "You've got to be extra careful with the Jewish." At first, I thought he was just being a jerk. But it turns out, 90% of our customer base are full-on Hasidic or otherwise Orthodox Jewish families. We don't know why. Perhaps as a tight-knit community, we're just deep into a chain of personal recommendations. Regardless, lovely people. But they've many proclivities. A Jewish couple will come in and explain they can't be locked into a room together for religious purposes. A man and a woman that aren't married can't be alone in a room together. So we need to come in and check on them every few minutes. I'll explain, hey, you're on camera the whole time and never locked in, but it won't do. I've often wondered if the couples we frequently have are there out of some sort of perverse fascination with being forced to be locked in a room with one another. Otherwise, why choose to do something that is so antithetical to the rules of their religion? One such couple actually proposed to each other in the room, and then sort of just smiled and barely touched each other. They came out all smiles saying they were thrilled to be engaged, but like not enough to touch one another, I guess? Edit. As a user pointed out, just as the couples are not allowed to be in a room together, they're also not allowed to touch one another until marriage. An aspect of Hasidicism I frequently and painfully forget. You'd think I'd have learned by now, after trying many times to high-five an Orthodox Jewish woman post-escape and getting left hanging in the worst way. Proposals in general can be weird. Often they go great, but ultimately the people need to get out so they can find the ring hidden in the end. Even if they're not doing well, they need to escape. That circumstance is always a bummer. It'll be two people, just the couple. Only the guy is completely freaking out the whole time about having to pop the question at the end, so the girl ends up dragging the guy through the whole thing, doing all the work. Or worse, we give them all the answers after an hour of standing around. All to reveal this ring at the perfect moment. Only that moment is completely ruined by this newfound perspective you have on your fiancé. The perspective of a completely bumbling idiot who didn't solve one frickin' puzzle the whole time. Otherwise, I get a lot of weird solutions from individuals based on the strange stuff they bring into the room. There's one puzzle that requires you to use a thermal imaging camera. Well, our buddy skipped that because he just so happened to have one with him. That's pretty extreme. Otherwise, it's just a bunch of magnets they have, or knowing Morse code when the room expects them to find a translation sheet. I don't know, there are a billion things. Edit. More stories. We have a corporate group rate. Large business groups can have all their employees come in and team up to get out. Only our location specializes in private events. That means if you come with just one other person, you can have the room to yourselves. This means the rooms are small. If we have a big corporate group, we'll split the group into teams of 8, and have all the groups start at once and try to get out of separate rooms to see who gets out first. Only the rooms are all very different. Entirely separate sets of puzzles, each testing very different types of thinking. Sounds fun. Only having your whole office split into teams and then see who's the best at objectively different tests can lead to some really cringy situations. You'll have one group of 8 get out 2 minutes before another group of their coworkers, who is also just about to get out, and then every time, without fail, a group of buttoned-up CEOs and their coworkers, all in their 50s, suddenly degenerate into shrieking teenagers, banging on the doors to other rooms, and shouting through the walls about how they're losers. Worse yet is when one corporate group will escape and another will not. The gloating is so goddamn cringy. Talk about team building. Also, one of our rooms has a CPR dummy in it. You're meant to take an endoscopy camera and stick it down his throat to find a puzzle. The things people have done to that poor guy and with that endoscopy camera, ugh. In their mouths, in their butts, in the walls, in the electrical sockets. They've stuck that camera anywhere you can think of. Surely sticking a camera in your butt, you don't think is part of the solution, right? Like, not one soul is in an escape room like, guys, I think I figured it out, and then drops trow. If anyone I went to an escape room with did that, no, I'm walking out. I'm banging on the door like, hello, I'd like to leave now, thank you. This guy, don't know him. Story 5. Actually work at a fairly large and well-known escape room. We've had a few minor celebrities come in. Most customers are great, super friendly, and there to have a good time. Some, however, are just plain crazy. We've had customers pee/poop on the floor and try to deny it after. We've had customers fall asleep on the floor, walk around barefoot, which is gross to me, frisky teenagers trying to feel each other up in our dark rooms, not understanding what night vision cameras are, and that I can see their every move. For those, I usually call in to remind them. Customers picking their noses, scratching themselves. One guy took off his shirt. But the most awkward is when you see legitimate borderline verbal abuse in families, usually from the dad to the children. Some people forget it's just a game. That stuff hurts my soul. But the best part is when you can tell how much fun a group is having. They're all smiles on the way out. Personally, I like to take on difficult customers, usually cranky grandparents, and see how happy I can make them at the end. Having to witness verbal abuse to family members, I don't even know what I would do. I would want to do something, but I would also feel like I couldn't, because I don't know, it's not my place or whatever. It just feels gross to even think about, man. And sure, part of it is them forgetting it's just a game, but the other part of it is, to do that, you just have to be a jerk. The game alone will not give you that behavior, I promise you. Story 6. I run and escape in France with my wife, and we have a few nice things that happen to us. A room we have takes place in 1979. You have to go into the apartment/hideout of a gang of bank robbers to get something back for the government, based on a real story that happened in our city. Since we do have a time machine, which is the starting point of all of our stories, we send time agents on duty for our clients. Here, the government, that wants Cold War intel back. Here are some events that happened. We had a wedding proposal for which we changed the story, and this guy hired us to get back an object that was stolen from his parents. The wedding ring happened to be this precious object. Really nice wedding proposal and moment. In this mission, there are books. We made them casual and numerous, so it's quite obvious there's no hidden info. Some players spent most of the game not participating in anything, instead carefully looking over all of the books to see if something was off. They were looking at two things: if the page numbers were in order, and if a letter wasn't circled in a book. Even with multiple very straightforward clues, he didn't want to stop, because maybe the clues could be false leads. As you could imagine, often, and despite contrary briefing rules, people break things, including the ceiling, as well as the wooden floor, and some right on the wall so everyone can see all the info, despite paper being available. One time, someone literally told us, "It's okay, it's easy to change," after breaking a furniture door to see what's inside. We have on a mission a high, thin piece of furniture, big like those old big wooden clocks. I don't know the English name. A key is visible at the bottom, and you have to fish it with a cable and a magnet. One family wanted to put their 5-year-old boy inside, hanging by the feet. Dangerous as hell. Some people really like to look at strange, weird, absolutely nuts theories to solve some challenges, while it's actually the easiest part of the game. They sometimes really want us to say that it was really hard, so players just have no chance. One day, we had the worst group ever. They made about 10% of the game with help. By the end, and because we wanted them to see the full story, we help them. Like, good, you found this information. Our machine can now compute the code. It's XXX. Now you just have to, and then we explain literally what to do. When the family left, the father told me, "Really? Not everyone can make it through? This seems so easy." Aha, yes, of course. You were the best. We have in one of our rooms a safe, and on it is written, maximum 3 tries before it's locked. You have about 12 similar objects with codes that are obviously for the safe, and you must determine the correct one. One day, a player randomly tried 3 of them. After the safe locked, we had to unlock it for them to continue. The player immediately tried 3 other ones and the safe locked again. Second manual intervention to unlock it. The player tried another one and opened the safe. At the end of the game, I came back to it and offered to show how to get the proper code. Their response? I don't need it. I found it. It was quite easy, actually. I pointed out randomly was not how it was meant to be done, and they said, I didn't make it randomly. I made it by elimination. It's a pretty easy strategy. Oh, did I mention this was the same player as the previous one mentioned? The thing I hate the most is when players get out of the room and because they didn't succeed in some part, they're really insistent on saying, okay, so we agree this, obviously some props requiring days of work, stuff was totally useless. I sometimes don't know how to let them know that they literally asked for the solution instead of trying. My bad English may make it sound like I'm a hateful person, but really, I love my players and our missions. Me and my wife create the missions, the stages, decor, and every prop ourselves, with all of our heart. We do also mostly have marvelous players, and we have great post-game conversations, sometimes even quite long. As OP mentioned, English wasn't their first language. If something didn't make sense, sorry. I tried my best to change wording in places, so this also wasn't a direct quote from the post, just so you know. But hopefully it made sense. Story 7. I worked in an escape room for 2 years, and I've seen it all. Besides the typical pee, vomit, and proposals, I've seen some weird stuff. I've seen 2 different couples literally break up in one of my escape rooms. I've seen a full-grown man push over his nephew to open the final door. He thought he was just going to break the room record. He was 15 minutes off. One of our rooms has a hidden ring box in it, which has caused many mini heart attacks. Couple attempted to bang in a corner that they thought I couldn't see on camera. 2 Chinese parents brought their 3 children to our escape room and yelled at them for an hour because the kids weren't smart enough to break the record. Oh, the parents didn't help at all, by the way. They stood in the corner and literally just yelled at the children. Baby shower in our escape room. Some guy brought multiple Tinder dates to our escape room and did the same room every time so he knew all the answers. He always paid and never tried to break the record, so I let it slide. The girls were always so impressed with him. Teenagers climbed through the ceiling tiles. Group got so drunk in the room that half of them passed out and we had to kick them out. Mom drops her kids off like it's a daycare and expects me to keep them busy for 2.5 hours during a 1-hour escape room at 10 p.m., by the way. The best group I've ever seen inside my room was a family of stoners. Mom, dad, son, son's girlfriend, and daughter. All reeked of weed when they came into the building. They had 90% of the room solved in about 15 minutes and I was freaking out. Even called my boss and I remember saying, I have 5 stoners about to break the record by 20 minutes. But then all of a sudden, all 5 of them got burnt out. They sat in a circle and talked to each other for about 45 minutes in the middle of the room. They took an hour and 15 to finish in total. I feel like I could write a book about my experience working in an escape room. It was the most fun I've ever had at a job. But at the same time, I was so stressed out every time I was there. But still, 10 out of 10, would work there again. Story 8. There's an escape room I help manage. One situation quickly came to mind when I read this. In our prison-style escape room, we have a laser maze. Players need to crawl or climb through to deactivate it and move forward. 2 players are required to finish, or so I thought, because there are 3 buttons to be pressed, and the 3rd button is out of reach from the other 2. A family came in to play our game with a younger boy, a very fit, relevant girl in her early 20s, their parents, and their grandparents who had some disabilities that required him to use those crutches that wrap around your forearms. So they play through and get to the laser maze. The girl got through fairly easily, but they needed to move fast since the timer was running. The young boy had a great idea. Here, use Grandpa's crutch. At which point he takes the crutch straight from Grandpa and slides it past all the lasers to his sister at the other end. Well, I was fascinated at this point, but even with the crutch it was a long stretch to hit them all. The girl took a second to find the right spot on the floor, planted her foot there, and went into a perfect perpendicular stretch with 1 foot on the ground, 1 foot on the far button, 1 hand on the middle button, and finally reaching the last button with the crutch. The family came out of the room so proud, and she boasted to the family about her daily yoga, almost convincing me to sign up, because it was just so impressive. That was one of the most creative and weirdest successful solutions to a puzzle I've seen in my years working there. Story 9. Escape room employee but quit last week. One time, a guy came up to the front desk and straight up asked for all of the answers to one of the rooms. When we inquired why, he said he's coming in a few weeks with his company for a business event, and since he hated all of his coworkers, wanted to show them up by solving everything. Naturally, we declined to offer any answers, and he sulked to his girlfriend, who was encouraging his dumb request, but oh, that's too bad, babe. Another time, a couple wanted us to help them announce their pregnancy to friends by putting up a "We're pregnant" poster in one of the rooms. We had multiple rooms per escape zone. It would be cute if the LED screen with a hand-drawn baby carriage wasn't in a satanic-themed escape room. It was a hit though, so My third memory is that during a particularly busy weekend, I had a group pre-book several zones in advance for a big group of 10 to 15 people. They arrived from another city in a limo with matching t-shirts, announcing that they've conquered their city, and that they're here to conquer Toronto. This is my go-to memory whenever other players ask me if anyone gets really into escape zones. Like previously mentioned by other employees here, I've also unwillingly participated in promposals, cringy but cute, and marriage proposals. Why? Story 10. Breakout Games employee here. 2 of our rooms start you out blindfolded and handcuffed. You'd be surprised how many older black ladies make jokes about being turned on as I'm putting them in handcuffs. I've also seen a group of kids one time who couldn't figure out how to open a door in the room. So this kid winds up and kicks it open, which busts the frame. One woman tried sticking her car keys into an outlet because she thought it would tell her something. The funniest moment was probably when I had a group of 8 police officers who were seriously jacked. Like, veins popping out of their eyeballs muscular. The room that they played had a startling event, and when it triggered, every single one of these guys jumped up and screamed like little girls. It was hilarious. I've had a drunk woman threaten to kick me in the balls if they didn't break out, which they didn't, but she didn't end up following through, thank God. Oh man, there was another time that I'd been there for 10 hours, and a group was playing a room with a locked door as the main focus of the first half. I kinda stopped watching the screen for a few minutes, only to look back and see they've used a handcuff key to remove the door hinges and took it off the frame. I couldn't really do anything at that point, so I just kind of let them continue. Using a handcuff key to remove door hinges? Look, all I'm saying, if I'm ever actually stuck in a room, whoever that was, I want them in there with me. I feel like they could do some serious work in an actual escape scenario. Story 11. Not an employee myself and not a real escape room, but this might fit anyway. There was an augmented reality attraction in Munich a few years ago, where visitors would walk alone through a bunker which was decorated like an old hospital, including a room with body bags on the wall. A visit took 1 hour and you were down there completely alone. But the employees wouldn't tell you that. You can guess how surprised that the staff were when one visitor upon exiting remarked on the scary-looking guy in the corner not reacting to anything. Naturally, the employees went down into the bunker to see who else was there, but they found everything as it was. No one was down there. After looking around a bit more, they found the scary-looking guy. A drug addict from the central train station nearby had snuck into the attraction and climbed into one of the body bags hanging on the wall to sleep there. Story 12. Escape room employee here, actually answering this while I'm watching a room. Here are a few of my strangest encounters. No one has banged, but people have gotten pretty close. Had a guy hide under the camera and use a pocket knife to cut the hinges off a box because they couldn't figure out the lock. Had a team escape purely because the toddler was mashing buttons on the escape keypad for 20 minutes straight. More than once, people have fallen asleep. And a team failed to escape a room because no one knew how to spell balloon, and they were all too embarrassed to ask for help. That last one, being embarrassed, relatable. I know how to spell balloon, but the embarrassed part, oh, I get that. I do. Well, if that's how they want to spend their money and time, sure. Story 13. Hey, I'm finally relevant in the thread now. I manage an extremely popular room escape business in Western Canada. I have a few stories. 1. One of our puzzles required wearing a pair of glasses to look at an LCD screen, while another player spins a dial to change what is shown on the screen. A grandma with what appeared to be her 3 grandchildren were playing it, and the grandma was getting very aggressive with the kids. The youngest kid ended up standing in the corner saying, "Well, if you're not going to be nice, then I'm not going to play anymore." The grandma resolved this situation by smacking him upside the head a few times until he cried. It was awkward. 2. We had a group punch a hole through the wall and drop a bunch of magnets that were needed for a puzzle into the crack. This happened 2 hours into a Saturday shift, meaning we had to take apart the whole wall when we only had 5 minutes between our rooms to fix this monstrosity, and we ended up breaking the bottom of the wall, reaching in with our hands and grabbing them, and then covering up the whole ordeal with a bookshelf. 3. The same group that put a hole in the wall came back and did another room, and they didn't understand anything that was happening. They refused assistance to further themselves along, and spent the last 10 minutes of their time making out in a corner. We had to physically intervene when she propped herself up on the counter and he started taking off his belt. Yeah, we put an end to that real quick. They might rent the room by the hour, but keep your damn clothes on. 4. The oddest one by far. A guy who called and was speaking to a female employee who will call female employee. Nice. Anyway, when he called, from what I was told, he told her that she had a really pretty voice and wanted to know her name. She told him her name, I don't know why, and then he asked when she would be working because he wanted to come meet her. He ended up booking and paying for a whole room, $210 Canadian for a single person, and when he showed up he asked if it could just be him and her in the room. She got really uncomfortable, understandable, and called me over to deal with him. When I asked him to tone down his behavior, he got really defensive, telling me I was selfish for keeping her all to myself? What? I asked him to leave or else I'd be calling the police. When we left work at 1 a.m. that night, there were only our 2 cars parked out front with a running car at the end of the road. Cul-de-sac with Monday to Friday businesses, so there should be no other cars. The car followed hers when we left. I ended up following both of them while calling the police, but the creepy guy screwed off down one of our busier roads and never heard from him again. 5. You cannot bring babies into the room. I don't know why you'd want to bring a 2-week-old baby into a room designed around horror and people jumping out at you. And if you try to bring your baby, you'll be denied. I usually end up babysitting for an hour when this happens, as long as the parents are nice. If you're rude, I have the power to make you not escape despite how smart you think you are. Your ability to escape is literally controlled by me. If I want you to escape with 20 minutes left, I can also do that. Lots of people try to bang. Keyword, try. We have to shut that down because A, disgusting. B, I feel like there's some legal stuff that could go down if that came out. Oh, and also alcohol. When groups come in that have been consuming alcohol, we have to watch them super closely because they try to do a lot of stupid stuff when drunk. Why you'd mix puzzles and logical thinking with booze? I don't know. But hey, you pay me. I don't really care. A couple common questions I'll answer. Can I get the video footage so I can show my family in 17 years at a wedding? No, we don't give out video footage. Some places might do it like when you get a photo on a roller coaster, but if I were to give you the 1 hour long video footage of you in the room, you could pretty much do anything with it and post it online, ruining the experience for those who haven't been here before. We try really hard to keep our rooms as surprising as possible because we love to scare our customers. Why do I have to put my phone in a locker? I'm expecting a call. If you're expecting a call, leave your phone with the game master. We'll come and get you if your babysitter calls. We do not want you to have phones in the room for 2 main reasons. 1, you could take photos and videos in the room and spoil it, and we also have fairly strong magnets, and don't want to chance you rubbing up against it and somehow damaging your phone. Only exception is Selena Gomez. She got to keep hers when she came in. It must be a lot of fun to watch customers all the time and laugh at the stupid things we do. I always respond to this one with a smile and say something along the lines of, haha, yeah, it's really fun to find the unique ways that people like to answer the puzzles. I hate watching you, unless you're a fun group that makes jokes. I have lots of stories working here and can answer any questions you guys have. Story 14. I've been a game master at an escape room for over a year. I have dozens of stories. Rude people, white trash people, mean people, dumb people, drunk people. One time I was called the N-word, myself having brown hair and blue eyes and being white as paste. This same group threatened to stab me in the middle of my intro and banged loudly in the bathroom. Just yesterday, a woman accused me of being a kid toucher, simply because I watch people on not hidden, by the way, cameras. One time, a woman was confused for over an hour because she didn't know all your stuff would be locked. Also, it's not uncommon for me to see a hard-on while I'm handcuffing a gentleman, and once I had to clean up a seat where I'd handcuffed a woman. Well, that last part didn't sound sanitary, but thanks for that. Being called a slur while working is fun. Gotta love interacting with clients or customers. And then that same group threatening to stab you? Why were they even there? Was it just to harass you, OP? Because it kind of sounds like it. I'm sorry about that. Story 15. Manager at an escape room here. I have a few incidents that stick out to me the most. I've had about 3 people try to change their baby's diapers on one of the tables in our room. Luckily, I would run in there in time to tell them they have to do that outside of the room while receiving death glares in the process. I told one guy he couldn't change his baby in the room, so he did it in our lobby instead. The bathrooms were maybe 15 feet down the hall. I had a group of high school cheerleaders come in and they were going to prop one girl up with their hands to get the clue on the ceiling. There was no clue there. We have freestanding lockers in one of our rooms, and we've had people hang from the top, and the lockers have almost toppled over them. We had a scanner that scanned a fake hand to open a door, but some guy punched the glass in on the scanner and ripped out all the wiring. Some people do a very poor job at distinguishing what is and what is not important to solving the room. We had an event for an AA group, but they were all on ecstasy. I don't understand either. One guy had no shirt on and only a bow tie. He proceeded to dance on the desk in the room and later passed out on said desk. Each of our rooms have 2 rooms. We had a group of guys, frat dudes, solve the first room, but they thought that was it. They started screaming and sprinting out of the door they came in through, which we tell them beforehand is not the door they're trying to get out of. They opened the door to the office where I was watching them, still screaming, and said, "Oops, sorry," through the screaming, ran into our lobby, still screaming. I had to awkwardly tell them they weren't done yet, and they ran back into the room, still screaming. This all happened in the span of like 15 seconds. I'm sure I have more, but those are the ones I remember the most. It's a doozy, but definitely one of the most entertaining jobs I've ever had. Changing the diaper in the room, that's just a health hazard. Can't be doing that. Super understandable. Punching through glass and ripping out wiring. Look, I don't know if this is your first escape room. It must be, because I don't think that would ever be the answer. That is so dangerous. I can't even think of a better word for it. Just yikes. And also, Frat dudes, this is the most wholesome one here, to be completely honest. These guys are just having a great time. I don't know any other way to say it, just dudes being dudes in the best way possible. And the fact that once they learned they hadn't completed it, they just ran back in. Hell yeah. You go, guys. You go. Anyway, that is all the stories we have for today. I would like to thank you very much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day or night wherever you are, and I will see you in the next one.